Over to Jar Jar and Amidala, they talk about their worries for what'll happen to the Gungans. This scene right here is what we needed more of from Jar Jar. He's more dignified, he's more serious. Sure, his weird way of speaking undermines it a bit, but he actually makes an interesting point. Gungans no die without a fight. We's a warriors. We's got a grand army. That why you no liking us, methinks. It's a subtler bit that I don't think anyone ever caught on to. The Naboo apparently don't have a standing army of their own. Is their conflict based around fear that the Gungans will be the aggressors in a war? It'd be interesting if this was explored more, but instead it seems to be more of an epiphany moment for Amidala, that she has to actually fight back and not hope for more peaceful means of settling this conflict. Though if it is, it's really underplayed. And again, it's a moment with Jar Jar where he's not being an embarrassment. This is what we needed more of in the movie. Less straight-up comic relief, maybe even more moments of insight, but whatever. Palpatine returns and informs them that he's been nominated to be the new Chancellor. He's confident that he'll be elected and that they'll finally resolve this situation. However, Amidala has decided to go back to Naboo to help free it. Palpatine objects, wanting her to stay safe, but she's adamant. So another big criticism of the movie is that Palpatine's plan makes no sense. Engineering a conflict to become Chancellor is fine, but that some of his actions don't agree with that, like ordering the Viceroy to kill the Jedi instead of just letting them go and tell the Senate what's happening. I don't agree with this criticism. To me, Palpatine is playing both sides against the middle. Acting as Darth Sidious, he has control over the Trade Federation and can exploit the planet. If the Trade Federation is successful in killing the Jedi and forcing the Queen to sign the treaty, he rules the planet and can springboard that to more opportunities down the line. If the Jedi get away, he can take advantage of that to push towards becoming the Supreme Chancellor and get even more power, but it also has the potential to look opportunistic and paint a larger target on his back. Hell, having Darth Maul succeed and get the Queen after she got away would still work. He could argue for defending Naboo, do the vote of no confidence without the Queen here, and retain power over Naboo and the Senate, and make it seem like, oh yeah, I totally resolved that situation on Naboo, no problem, while of course doing nothing. Palpatine is a manipulator and opportunist. He can get around bumps that occur in his plans. This is expanded universe stuff, but part of the Sith philosophy is to always operate from a position of strength. Being able to change your plans on the fly to amass more power is a necessary skill for someone like Palpatine. It doesn't matter if the Trade Federation succeeds or not. He's gonna come out winning regardless. Also, after the Senate session, apparently Amidala decided to switch into her Centauri from Babylon 5 cosplay with this hair. Back to the Jedi Council, they elect not to train Anakin despite his strength in the Force because of him being too old. Okay, even if I bought the 9 years old is too old to learn crap, what do you propose to do instead? By your own admission, he's strong with the Force. Do you want the Sith to end up recruiting him? Or for him to try to learn to choke people on his own? Qui-Gon says he'll take on Anakin as his apprentice regardless, saying Obi-Wan is ready to face the trials to become a fully fledged Jedi Knight. However, they decide to table this discussion for now so that they can go with Amidala back to Naboo to protect her and hopefully draw out the Sith attacker. I'm guessing the reason they don't send, like, a dozen more Jedi as backup is because Maul could probably sense that many Jedi in one place and elect not to reveal himself. Later, Obi-Wan still objects to this, saying that the Council can all sense Anakin's dangerous, but Qui-Gon is convinced that his fate is uncertain, indicating that he might sense it too, but believes he can steer him on the right path. Qui-Gon, sir, I don't want to be a problem.
You won't be any. I'm not allowed to train you, so I want you to watch me and be mindful.
Okay, training or no training, maybe don't bring the 9-year-old into a war zone? Anakin asks the million-dollar question that he had overheard from Yoda. What the hell are midichlorians?
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells and communicates with the Force.
They live inside of me?
Yes, in your cells. We are symbionts with them, life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without the midichlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force.
The midichlorians are a stupid, unnecessary addition. The big criticism of them claims that they provide a scientific explanation of the Force, but that's not accurate. What they do is overcomplicate the Force. The Force suddenly has an extra step to it. When a Jedi meditates or tries to feel the Force, they're not actually communing with the Force or accessing it. They're telepathically talking to bacteria who do the talking for the Force. Midichlorians aren't a scientific explanation for the Force. They're the frickin' Lorax! I'm the midichlorian! I speak for the Force! Why can't life exist without midichlorians? And why did you need them to learn about the Force? Are the midichlorians the ones lifting rocks? Or seeing the future? Is it just the midichlorians sending you images of it? How does this account for the dark side or the light side? Are there good midichlorians and bad midichlorians? If there are thousands of them in one body, how do you get them to agree on something when they're all just trying to talk to the person they're inside of? Why do they even want to talk to the Jedi or the Sith?
It just raises too many questions.
The midichlorians are an asinine, unnecessary addition to how this works, made no better by the implication that you're special if you have more of them in you for some reason. Anyway, on their way back, Qui-Gon asks what exactly the Queen hopes to accomplish by returning, since they won't have an army, and the Jedi probably won't be able to take down tanks. Now, if they only had battle droids, oh hell yeah, this war would be over by lunchtime. As such, she needs Jar Jar's help to contact the Gungans. Once they arrive, the comic solves a plot hole from the movie by just making the enemy stupid. When they left, there was that whole blockade, but it's gone now. In the comic, they say it's because with the invasion over, there's no need for a blockade. Except, of course, people can still escape, still send other forces in, like, say, a commando unit of Jedi and the Naboo leadership. If Palpatine did want her recaptured, having a big-ass blockade would certainly be a way to grab her or shoot her down. Hell, just shooting her down would be a smart move on Palpatine's part. Make her into a martyr. They land their ship in the swamps near the Gungan city. Do you think the Queen will be successful?
I don't know, but we mustn't use our powers to influence the Gungans. We can only use them to steal boats, as it says in the Jedi Code.
Jar Jar returns from the city and says the whole place was deserted. Looked like a fight. However, he knows where the Gungans usually go if there's trouble, leading them to some ruins. The Gungans are indeed there, and Boss Nass doesn't want to hear them out, but Amidala still offers an alliance. Until Padme speaks up. Padme reveals that she is Queen Amidala. The lady who we've been thinking is her is actually her decoy. Well, points for that. Everyone does pay attention to her whenever she's in the room. I do love how Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in the background exchange looks like, seriously? How the hell did we not sense that? Padme humbles herself before Boss Nass, having everyone bow to him and making it clear they need his help and will do what they need to secure it. This is, sadly, another missed opportunity for Jar Jar as a character. We could have had him be the bridge between the two cultures. Maybe have him reveal Padme as the true queen. Like, he had some insight or was a skilled observer who figured it out before anyone else did. But no, instead we just have Boss Nass declaring Jar Jar to be a general of their forces while claiming that he brought them together. This is also in spite of the fact that Jar Jar was exiled for being clumsy, and you want to give him command over troops? Again, this could have been an arc for Jar Jar. Maybe he's clumsy and slapsticky to start off with, but then he sees his own people getting killed and tortured, and he takes a level in badass, or he's some savant in military strategy, but never had the opportunity until now to show it off. They make contact with the resistance groups on the planet. It's not a lot, but it should be enough. The plan is to lure the droid army defending the capital away to fight the approaching Gungan army, while Padme and her forces sneak into the city through hidden passageways. The goal is to capture the Viceroy. Supposedly, without his leadership, the droids will be lost and confused, but I think it's more likely that they're playing off a remark made at the beginning of the movie, that the Trade Federation is normally very cowardly. As such, if they capture him, they can probably force him to surrender the invasion if they threaten his life. However, if they fail to reach him, they have another part of the plan. Use the few pilots they have to take some Naboo starfighters in the palace hangar bays and send them up to destroy the droid control ship in orbit. Take that out, the droids will die on their own. Seems like a really crappy design flaw for these things, especially since you live in a world with droids acting independently all the time. But then again, these battle droids have proven to be as effective as poking a rock with a fork. I mean, for crying out loud, the only reason they've succeeded as well as they have so far is because the Naboo put up no resistance to their invasion. Anyway, the Viceroy takes the bait and orders his forces to attack the mobilizing army. Some have criticized why he'd fall for such an obvious ploy, but chances are he thinks his skeleton defense is enough to hold off a small force, and even then doesn't know about the hidden tunnels under the city. In addition, if the Trade Federation really are cowardly, he wouldn't want there to be a big battle in the place he's currently occupying. Hell, why risk destroying the city? He sees the Gungans as primitives and his battle droids expendable fodder. And thus the battle begins, with the Gungans having shielding technology that protects them from the artillery of the Federation tanks, but not the battle droids attacking with small arms. The force at the palace gets in, and yet again they bring Anakin along with them. Congratulations! This plan goes to hell, and you either get a little kid killed, or you hand the chosen one over to the enemy to be shaped into a bad guy! God, you suck, Qui-Gon! Anakin goes into a spare fighter to avoid the shooting.
Anakin, stay where you are. You're safe there.
As the Naboo starfighters fly up, Darth Maul intercepts Amidala's force. And here's where the comic starts having some issues as an adaptation. Up until now, it's actually been pretty dang good. Doing a lot, effectively slashing a few minor bits of dialogue here or there just to speed things along. But now with 4 simultaneous bits in the climax it has to cover, corners are being cut. For instance, the big reveal of Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber, it gets covered up by a reaction shot of Qui-Gon. Some might say, well, everyone who knows about the movie already knows about it. But if that's the case, why even bother translating the story into comic form at all? You might as well just have stills from the movie with text next to them. While Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan decide to engage Darth Maul, some droidekas are unleashed on the rest of the commandos. Realizing they need help, Anakin uses the blasters on the starfighter he's in to break through their shields and destroy them. Wizards! That's cool! Sorcerers! That's a terrible line! Unfortunately, since he's unfamiliar with the starfighter's controls, he accidentally engages the autopilot and sends him into orbit to join the rest of them. The droid fighters soon begin shooting at him too. This is really where the worst of Anakin's lines come from, and there's no saving any of this dialogue, even with a seasoned actor. Woo boy, this is tense! If we tell the audience it is, surely they'll believe us! Strangely, the part of the finale that gets trimmed down the most here is the fight with Darth Maul. And that's really weird, since one of the things that everyone seems to love about this movie is that fight. Me personally, I'm not as into it. I hate how acrobatic and ninja-like the Jedi are in the prequels. It stops being a sword fight and turns into a big dance routine. The only thing that makes it epic or exciting is Duel of the Fates, which... okay, if there's one thing we can all agree on when it comes to all of Star Wars, it's that the music is freaking awesome. Personally, I prefer lightsaber fights where we have a more personal connection with the characters, where they're really displaying their emotions. I don't need them doing fancy telekinetic tricks or jumping around everywhere to be impressive. And unfortunately, the movie doesn't have that. Qui-Gon is emotionless throughout the fight, and as established, he's just a black character for me. We've barely spent any time with Obi-Wan throughout the film, and Maul has 1 line of dialogue in it, 2 extras in the comic. I just don't care enough about it. Although, while I'm not big on the movie's version of this fight, I do admit the choreography is still a spectacle. The comics is not. I've said this before, but there's been a serious downgrade in comic book fight scenes in the last 20 years. Not just in this adaptation, but in superhero books too, where it's just random stills of a battle rather than sequential storytelling of a fight. It's the same here and does a disservice to the movie. I will say there is a bit of the fight that I do like, that the comic kind of butchers. There's a moment where the 3 characters are separated from one another by some force fields. Realizing they can't get to each other, Qui-Gon immediately sits down to start meditating, while Obi-Wan is in the back worried, and Darth Maul seethes and paces impatiently. No dialogue is spoken during this bit, and yet illustrates character and philosophy brilliantly by just their body language. Qui-Gon is a seasoned master of the Jedi, and the Jedi philosophy is peace, contemplation, defense. There's no reason he needs to have his lightsaber out, so he turns it off and calmly waits. He is at peace with the Force. Obi-Wan isn't experienced. He's young and still emotional, so he's worried about his master having to fight a Sith Lord single-handedly, so he's standing and anxious. The Sith philosophy emphasizes operating from a position of strength and anger. He's trying to intimidate Qui-Gon while also clearly annoyed that he can't slice up this Jedi that he hates. It's a wonderful bit of visual storytelling in a film that desperately needs more like it. And the comic reduces it to one panel. Qui-Gon doesn't have his lightsaber put away. In fact, it looks like he's about to accidentally cut into his own leg. We can't see Obi-Wan. And the force field looks like two energy beams that you could just duck under and continue the fight. Maybe that's why he still has his lightsaber out. He knows Maul can just reach under there and poke him with his if he doesn't. We arrive at the moment where everything seems to go wrong. Padme's group is captured, the Gungans are overwhelmed, and Anakin's starfighter crashes inside the hangar of the droid control ship. You'd think there'd be a force field or something to prevent, like, stray debris or blasts from the fight going in like that. And of course, the most important part, Qui-Gon getting stabbed. Things start turning around, though as a distraction from the decoy Amidala, wearing her warrior makeup and giant tam o' shanter, allows Padme to overtake the guards and hold the Viceroy at gunpoint. Obi-Wan rushes in to fight Darth Maul, even managing to slice his double-bladed saber in half, though it still functions. Wait, it still works after being cut in half? Is a double-bladed lightsaber just two regular lightsabers glued together? Obi-Wan gets kicked into one of those giant pits without safety railings that are just all over the place in Star Wars, and loses his saber in the process. Back on the droid control ship, Anakin manages to shoot torpedoes out into the ship, apparently reaching the reactor. This is another bit that's criticized about the film, this child taking out the entire droid control ship on his own. Honestly, the idea of young Anakin destroying it could have worked, but having him be excited and happy and saying things like, "I'll try spinning, that's a good trick," it's bad. I wouldn't even say it's childish, it's just not how humans say things. You want to actually make me invested in this scene? Make him panicked. This is a child in the middle of a space battle. Show him looking all around him and just barely surviving, getting some lucky shots off. Keep his dialogue to a minimum beyond, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." And then, when he wins the day and lands, you have someone come up to him and tell him, "Anakin, that was amazing! You're the chosen one!" And suddenly there's this gleam in his eye, this slow smile across his face as those words etch into his memory that he is the chosen one and can do no wrong. Or, just have him yell, "Now this is pod racing! Whoopee!" Back in the fight with Obi-Wan, he uses the Force to grab Qui-Gon's saber, which in the comic has a nice shot where the saber goes over Maul's shoulder, and he leaps up and slices Maul in half. Jeez, all I asked for was a little off the top. So, Maul ends up surviving this in spin-off media. Do they ever, explain how? Because between this and a bunch of other Star Wars stories, I'm beginning to suspect that bottomless holes are actually Lazarus pits. Qui-Gon dies, his final words asking Obi-Wan to train Anakin. With the droid army disabled, the Viceroy is shipped off to explain his actions to the Senate. "I think you can kiss your trade franchise goodbye." Yep, really makes all those people starving to death worth it. After Palpatine returns to Naboo, having successfully been elected Chancellor, they hold a funeral for Qui-Gon. And the comic put the scenes out of order. Yoda is supposed to convey Obi-Wan the rank of Jedi Knight and state that the Council has approved his request to train Anakin, while giving his own concerns about it, but they put that after the funeral in the comic instead of before. So Obi-Wan tells Anakin in the comic that the Council has given their approval to train him, before they actually do so. Speaking of, the funeral is a scene that the Phantom Menace actually did right. A good sequence. And once again, comics screwed it up. Off to the side, Yoda and Mace Windu discuss the fact that clearly the guy who fought Qui-Gon was a Sith, and they speculate about whether this guy was the master or the apprentice, because the Sith in this era only operate with two at a time. In the movie, it cuts over in a panning shot to Palpatine as the score has an undertone of menace about him. That is honestly a really good shot, and a good moment in the movie, And the comic leaves that out, just as the dialogue. It's fine, it's just once again a shame that the comic is leaving out some actual good parts. And so our comic ends with a splash page showing the big parade and celebration of peace between the Gungans and Naboo, though weirdly, instead of Boss Nass being presented with the sacred plasma ball, or whatever the hell that thing was, it's Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Jar Jar approaching the Naboo leadership. I guess in the comic version, there is no peace between these two peoples. Can't wait for that to be followed up on in Episode 2's comic. Anyway, I still think the movie is bad, but the comic adaptation, as an adaptation, is actually pretty damn good. In rewatching the movie for the review, I'll say this. It's not unbearable. It's still quotable, still enjoyable depending on what you're looking for, but the effects are still a major issue in a lot of scenes. Jar Jar in particular has a very uncanny valley thing going for his movements when walking alongside the real people. I actually found him much more distracting than the Yoda puppet that everyone seems to hate. I don't. I much prefer it to the CG version used in later cuts of the film. Ironically, I'd actually welcome an update to the effects there. Marvel has shown that you can have characters like Thanos and the Hulk standing alongside real people and seeming fine. So a version with better effects for Jar Jar and the Gungans would be pretty cool, even if I don't like the overall product. The dialogue is still awkward as hell in a lot of spots, not helped by very low-key performances where no one is being told how to act or emote like they should be. Personally, I feel that The Phantom Menace is the weakest of the 3 prequel films. It does set up a lot of stuff. The Senate, Palpatine's takeover as Chancellor, the titular menace that is a phantom since they don't know exactly what it is, Obi-Wan and Anakin, but the story stakes don't feel as high as they should be. And many people have pointed out that despite all that setup, you could honestly start straight from episode 2 and not really miss anything important. In some ways, it being better to do that, because then you don't have the awkwardness of knowing that Padme and Anakin met when she was a teenager and he wasn't even 10 yet. Hey, wait, why did they elect a teenager as queen? As for the comic, I don't know if I'd call it better than the movie, but it doesn't really cut much out that's important. Sure, they shortened the pod race scene, but the climax is preserved in its most important elements, even if it's rushed through. The artwork, despite a few standard hiccups, is pretty good, and any adaptation that's able to capture so much of the story without feeling bogged down should be commended. Really, its problems are that in trying to recapture so much of the film, it replicates some of the same problems. The flat emotions of the characters and a lack of interesting dialogue, but that's less the comic's fault than probably a mandate to copy the film exactly. Next time, Star Wars Prequels Month continues with Solo! Of course it doesn't. Attack of the Clones is next.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Hello, my friends. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with others. And if you get a chance, maybe check out my Patreon.